that great introduction, and of course all the work you've been doing on stopping HS2 in the last 2 years since I last addressed your conference. And my, how you've grown. Now, the way the Stop HS2 campaign has been treated in the last few years is very similar to the way that UKIP gets treated, with unfounded pejorative criticisms flying around when, as Nigel Farage said yesterday, opponents choose to play the man and not the ball. We've been called selfish, we've been called Luddites, we've been called liars. And I've lost count of the number of times when I've been asked, well, aren't you just a bunch of NIMBYs? To which the answer always is, no, we're a bunch of people who've been bothered enough to read the plans, to understand what is proposed, and to realise that this is an insane idea, which isn't needed, which will bleed the country dry, and has only got this far because you've got a bunch of politicians who are not paying attention, and a strong lobby from vested interests who will actually make money out of paying for what the politicians are calling their legacy. And you should be proud, because HS2 could have been added to the list of policies that Nigel read out yesterday, where UKIP have moved first, and now so many more politicians have followed. Some commentators have criticised the party because you did have high-speed rail in the last manifesto, but that's just lazy. You weren't proposing this. You weren't proposing HS2, and even if you were, it's not a crime to change your mind. And that's what we've seen in the last 2 years. Since UKIP has come out, you were followed by the Green Party, the Institute of Directors, the New Economics Foundation, the Adam Smith Institute, the Institute of Economic Affairs, and the National Audit Office, and the Public Accounts Committee. All have been asking, what is going on here? And since those questioning HS2 have become more mainstream, we've seen a little bit of movement from the main parties, with a host of senior figures coming out against the project in the last few weeks, saying that they've changed their minds, following you, because, to paraphrase John Maynard Keynes, it is right to change your mind when the facts change. With HS2, the facts have changed, or more rightly, the lies have been exposed, and you've led the way in the political sphere. What you have done is right. And what is wrong, and what we've seen from politicians who have who've already spent too much political capital to defend the project, to change their minds now, is to stick their fingers in their ears and refuse to listen to any criticism whatsoever. The crescendo of questioning voices has led David Cameron to start a fight back in the last couple of weeks, without being able to accept the obvious. If HS2 was such a good idea, you wouldn't need a fight back. Now, the reason they need a fight back is that there was never any assessment of what was best for Britain's transport infrastructure. Before the last election, the great Euro-federalist Andrew Adonis was a noble, stuck in as Transport Secretary, and he said, high-speed rail, we've got to have it. The French have it, the Germans have it, the Spanish have it, there's an EU directive to have it. 1996 TN-T directive. And, of course, it fits with the Euro-federalist concept of needing to create super cities. Like, let's be honest, why on earth would you plonk a station in Long Eaton if it's not to try and create developments to join up Nottingham and Derby? The HS2 Limited chief engineer said as much with the Birmingham Airport station, saying it would create a new city to join up Birmingham and Coventry. So anyway, there we were, 5 weeks before the 2010 general election, and the rationale was, we've got to have it. It was that simple. Oh, and it's got to be faster than any railway anywhere in the world. That was the brief. Lord Adonis had left the time bomb ticking in the DfT, and the coalition was stupid enough to pick it up. The reality is that when you look at the other countries in Europe, we're a smaller country and our bigger cities are closer together, and we already actually have high-speed rail. It's just that we don't call it high-speed rail. We call it the West Coast Main Line, the Great Western, the East Coast Main Line. We've had it since the 1970s. We don't need to catch up with the rest of the world. They are still catching up with us. But none of that matters. The decision had been made. And because the decision was made without any actual justification, the job was then to try and justify it. And to be honest, that's one of the great things with working in this campaigning against HS2. It's so easy to destroy the justifications because they were all made up after the fact, and that's why none of them fit. First, the coalition said it will be an environmental solution. We will develop a high-speed rail network as part of our vision for a low-carbon economy. But they failed to realise that the energy needed to get down to what was now being downgraded to 225 miles an hour. As we pointed out, they realised there's no train in the world that does 250. And said, we're future-proofing it. But anyway, to get to that speed, what you would need, just to get from London to Birmingham, 350 megawatts. Now, to put that into context, there are power stations in this country which do not produce that much electricity. And that's just to get from London to Birmingham. But of course, when you ask, where's all the electricity coming from? You get the answer, part of transport, what are you asking us for? And because of the speeds they picked, it's got to run pretty straight, unless you can stick 600 million quid at it to put a handbrake turn around the richest parts of George Osborne's constituency. So it's got to run pretty straight. So 50 ancient woodlands are under threat. 350 wildlife sites are threatened. That is one for every mile of HS2. Then they moved on to say the justification was that it had a strong business case. The problem was it doesn't. It's been completely made up, and what we've seen is the benefit-cost ratio has been in free fall since the outset. The best bit of that is a huge proportion of the supposed £44 billion of economic benefit comes from the concept that no one works on a train. So if you've ever seen someone tapping away on a laptop or even with a pen and a bit of paper working on a train, you are wrong. It does not happen. That's what the Department of Transport say. So as a result, if you go faster, you can put a cash value on the time saved. Multiply that by the earnings of everyone on a train, 70 grand. Yes, everyone on a train earns 70 grand a year. And then you multiply that by a grossly inflated passenger forecast, and you get tens of billions of pounds worth of economic benefit. This was picked up by the Public Accounts Committee, and they couldn't have been more critical, with things like, I wish you guys were honest. Isn't this going to be a high-speed sucking service? Your business model is from the field of dreams. Build it, and they will come. You've given the process of forecasting passenger demand to people with vested interest in building this. And of course, the best one, your assumptions do not reflect real life. But therein is the problem. The mainstream leaders do not care about reality. What is the point of having the Public Accounts Committee or the National Audit Office if ministers are going to respond to their well-founded criticisms by saying, we don't recognise you, we don't recognise anything you're saying, think as it is for the sake of their vanity. And we wonder why this country is in a mess. We've seen the argument that we need HS2 to catch up with the rest of the world, oddly enough by promoting a 19th century solution to a 20th century problem in the economy. Looking around the world, ultra-high-speed lines have had all the same problems. They have been financial basket cases, like in Kent, because the passenger numbers that were used to justify the need for their construction never turned up. HS2 was then touted as a magic wand to cure the north-south divide. But again, all of that international evidence shows that high-speed rail lines drag economic activity to the capital. HS2 will not heal the north-south divide, but it will be a hammer and chisel to turn it into a chasm, sucking more stuff to London. If you go to Seville, you will see the Expo, the big venue that was set up to promote Seville 20 years ago when high-speed rail was built. It's boarded up. There's padlocks on the door. It did not work. More stuff went to Madrid. Anyway, now the public are strongly cottoning on to this. Back in January, the YouGov polling showed a tight 44% against, 42% for building HS2. And now, that's gone to 55% against, with only 29% for. And this month, the Institute of Economic Affairs, the Campaign to Protect Rural England, and the Institute of Directors weighed in. The Institute of Directors said that members didn't want it. CBRE said that the environmental destruction and disruption would be greater than imagined. And the Institute for Economic Affairs said that the total bill, which officially stands at £50 billion, when those promoting HS2 have the decency to add in the cost of trains, which you may have heard 42.6 being used, doesn't include trains. Build a train line, think you want a couple of trains. Anyway, the Institute for Economic Affairs said that the cost would come to 80 billion because there's a load of stuff that hasn't been added in. The Treasury, a couple of days later, came up with 73 billion. And oddly enough, they came up with those figures in completely different ways. Oddly enough, not even adding the cost of financing the project. You know, you're going to have to get loans for it. What's that going to cost? Neither of them even looked at that. So who knows where this will spiral up to? The best one then was that to rebut the idea that this would possibly continue to spiral, there was an open letter signed by 8 heads of construction firms promising that HS2 would come in up on budgets. The problem was they got to mention that 2 of them are already over budget. And that's on design work that cost millions, not construction work that cost billions. So what we've had since is, besides this, the governments are now very much on the ropes. Their fightback is coming, and it's going to say that it's all about wider economic benefits. Everything else has been discredited, more or less. So now £15 billion of economic benefits have been magicked up from nowhere. KPMG have been reported, or more rightly, been paid £250 million to support. The HS2 will be worth £15 billion every year to the economy. KPMG, the same KPMG that couldn't find a £1.5 billion hole in the Coles accounts, paid that money and invented a brand new methodology. It's not cooking the books, it's completely rewriting them. And of course, the other thing they forgot to mention was that in 2010, they wrote a report saying that HS2, so KPMG wrote a report saying that HS2 will cost jobs in East Anglia, the East Midlands, the South East, the West Country and Wales. Because it doesn't create them, it just moves them around. So when the updated business case comes out in October, more random numbers will be picked to go in front of 1,000 jobs and £1 billion worth of benefits. The way that it's going, if a new burger van was to turn up on a match day at Old Trafford, it will be because of HS2. And then I've got a few emotive phrases saying, Cameron said we have to think big, and we should emulate the Victorians, conveniently forgetting how many Victorian railway engineers went bust. And of course, the fact they were taking over canals. And in the Victorian age, most people were able to walk to work because there were jobs in their community. And if we actually invested in 21st century technology, that might actually enable more people to work in the communities. The other argument being touted now is capacity. In fact, now it's always been about capacity. You can search a myriad of articles in 2010 and not find one use of that word. But the thing is, there are cheaper, quicker ways of providing capacity that deliver more benefits to more people. The government will stick with forecasts saying the West Coast Main Line will be full, despite the fact this relies on an outdated methodology that has been shut to the bin because it overestimates long distance travel and is only used to justify HS2. They'll ignore the fact that the building east-west will create a new path from Milton Keynes into London to increase capacity. Or indeed, that the first group's bid document for the West Coast Main Line franchise said the West Coast Main Line franchise is unique because of the extra capacity, unreleased capacity it holds. And of course, freeing up capacity means that some cities losing the trains you already have. 32 cities, like Coventry, Stoke, Aberdeen, Leicester, would lose services to London, have slower services to London, or have no services to London at all if HS goes ahead. But we have blind politicians promoting the white elephant, and they don't want to hear that. So, the thing is, that HS2 will suck up investment in the railway line for years, meaning the rest of the network continues to face crush-out conditions. Now, no matter how flawed their reasoning is, they will stick with these arguments because they have nowhere else to go. They'll even say HS2 is needed for freight, even though it can't carry freight. But eventually, the wheels will fall off that wagon too. The argument is simple. HS2 is the wrong thing to do, and it's a train crash waiting to happen. And I hope you are with us in the fight to make sure it eventually